I was looking at my high school senior photos the other day, and it really hit me just how bizarre that traditional portrait setup actually is.
Oh yeah, the classic studio look.
Exactly. I mean, you walk into this totally clinical room, they pull down that sheet of like mottled blue paper or maybe a bright white seamless canvas.
Right, the seamless paper roll.
Yeah. And then the photographer just fires off these two massive umbrellas that blast you with completely flat light. You end up looking, honestly, less like a human being and more like a deer caught in the world's most aggressively lit headlights.
Well, the functional goal of those old studios was simply undeniable illumination. Like, the entire philosophy was built around making sure every single millimeter of the face was exposed.
Zero shadows whatsoever.
Exactly, leaving absolutely nowhere for shadows to exist. It was a highly utilitarian approach to documentation, really.
But as we look at the state of visual media today, and it's Tuesday, June 30, 2026, by the way, that sterile floodlit approach is just vanishing from high-end work.
It really is. It's night and day.
We are seeing these incredible, moody, deep visual landscapes now.
Hmm.
Honestly, looking at a modern luxury portrait feels less like a photo studio and more like stepping onto a meticulously crafted cinematic movie set.
Yeah, the psychological impact of a photograph changes entirely when you stop trying to just, document a face and you start trying to build an atmosphere.
Totally.
We are witnessing a complete rebellion against that flat studio aesthetic. We're moving towards something far more intentional and layered.
Okay, let's unpack this because our mission today is driven by this massive, really detailed document we received. It's called richjeweltones.docs.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is. It outlines this massive shift happening right now in luxury portraiture. The core argument is that photographers and clients alike are just abandoning those bright, airy studios in favor of deep jewel tones and highly tactile, texture-focused environments. And whether you are a photographer or maybe someone prepping for a personal branding shoot, planning a wedding, or you're just insanely curious about how visual manipulation works, understanding the mechanics of this shift completely changes how you evaluate an image.
It does, because the shift is fundamentally about creating timeless, gallery-worthy artwork rather than just, a disposable piece of digital content.
Yeah, something you'd actually want on your wall.
Exactly. And to understand how this artwork is constructed, you have to look at the foundational building blocks, starting with the color palette.
Right, the colors.
The source material specifically identifies rich jewel tones as the driving force here. We are talking about colors inspired directly by precious gemstones.
Like emerald and ruby and all that.
Yeah, emerald green, sapphire blue, ruby red, a really rich burgundy, amethyst purple, deep teal, garnet.
Wait, I have to jump in here and ask about the physics of that choice.
Yeah.
Because if you just want to inject color into a photo, why not use pastels? Or, like, bright primary colors? What is it about a gemstone color that inherently creates this luxury feel?
Well, it really comes down to visual weight and how different pigments interact with photons hitting the camera sensor.
Okay, so it's literal science.
It is literal science. Pastels are essentially a base color mixed with a massive amount of white. So when you shine a light on a pastel background, it reflects almost all of that light back at the camera.
Oh, I see.
That flood of reflected light bounces around the room, it fills in all the shadows on the subject's face, and it just flattens the entire image. Jewel tones, on the other hand, act like light sponges.
That makes me think of television lighting, actually.
How so?
Well, if you look at a pastel portrait, it feels exactly like a breezy network sitcom. Those shows are lit with massive flat lights, so actors can move anywhere on set without falling into shadow.
Right, yeah.
It's light, it's airy, it's easy to process. But a jewel-toned portrait, that feels like a prestige, high-budget HBO drama.
Oh, that is a great analogy.
Right. It's like a single camera setup. The shadows are heavy.
Yeah.
Tells your brain immediately that the stakes are higher, and the emotional resonance is deeper.
That analogy holds up perfectly on a technical level, actually. I mean, a prestige drama looks that way because the dark, saturated colors like a deep emerald or ruby, they absorb the ambient light rather than bouncing it around.
They soak it up.
Yeah, they allow shadows to exist. And when a background absorbs light, it creates a visual anchor. It pulls the eye inward and carves out a literal three-dimensional space within a two-dimensional photograph.
Wow.
It provides this immediate sense of warmth and depth.
So the color itself is actually doing the heavy lifting to manipulate the depth of field.
Exactly.
But, I mean, color is just a concept until you put it on something physical. Which brings us to the actual surfaces being used. Because you can't just paint a flat piece of drywall navy blue and expect it to look like a cinematic masterpiece.
No, you absolutely cannot. And what's fascinating here is that the background has evolved from a passive void into an active storyteller.
Yeah, it's like a third subject in the photo.
Exactly. The source document heavily emphasizes the texture-focused half of this equation. Photographers are sourcing heavy velvet curtains, intricate vintage wallpaper, actual stone walls.
A real stone wall.
Real stone walls, exposed brick, rough marble, raw linen, and these beautifully painted canvas backdrops that actually mimic old master paintings.
Okay, I look at a list like that: stone walls, heavily patterned vintage wallpaper, heavy drapery, and a red flag goes up for me.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, if I am paying a premium rate for a portrait, I want to be the undisputed focal point. Doesn't a busy, highly textured architectural background completely distract from the human being actually getting their picture taken?
I mean, it seems counterintuitive, I'll give you that, but a textured background actually enhances the subject's prominence when it's lit correctly.
Really? How does that work?
Let's look at the mechanics of velvet, for example, which is highly prized in these setups. Velvet isn't just a flat fabric. Structurally, it consists of thousands of tiny raised threads called the pile.
Okay, right, the fuzziness of it.
Right, so when light hits a flat paper backdrop, it hits a smooth surface and bounces back uniformly. But when light hits velvet, those microscopic threads catch the highlights on their tips, and they trap the shadows in the valleys between them.
Oh, wow. So you are basically creating millions of micro shadows that the camera sensor picks up,
Exactly.
which tells the human brain, hey, this surface has physical depth.
Precisely the effect. It tricks the eye into perceiving tactile reality. Those microshadows give the background a dense physical weight.
That makes total sense.
And because the background has its own distinct shadow structure, it creates a physical separation from the subject standing in front of it. The soft, luxurious folds of a velvet drape actually push the brightly lit subject forward.
While a flat paper backdrop just has no texture at all.
Right, so with flat paper, the subject tends to look like a sticker pasted onto a void.
Yeah, like you've just been photoshopped in.
Yeah.
But the texture, it grounds the human being in a believable reality.
Yeah.
The slight imperfections in a vintage wall, or like the grain of a rustic wood panel, it gives the subject a sense of history.
Furthermore, those textures dictate the emotional tone. Like, a marble texture suggests a cool, classical prominence, while an antique interior or silk drapery introduces a European-inspired timelessness that a blank studio wall simply cannot achieve.
Okay, I am totally tracking with the physics of the color and the micro shadows of the texture. But there is a glaring practical problem here.
Okay, what's the problem?
If your entire set is built out of dark navy velvet or dark stone, and these materials are literally designed to absorb light, how do you avoid taking a photo of a pitch-black cave?
Right.
Because I've seen these incredible shots where 90% of the image is pure shadow and just a sliver of light hits the jawline. How do they pull the subject out of the darkness without the whole photo just looking like a muddy, underexposed mistake?
Well, that is the dividing line between a standard photographer and a master of lighting.
It's all in the lights.
Completely. You are dealing with highly absorptive elements, so managing the fall-off of light is critical. Professionals employ very specific, highly controlled lighting techniques to illuminate the subject while allowing the jewel tones to remain rich and dark.
Okay, so what are these techniques?
The first one is soft directional lighting.
Meaning the light isn't coming from right next to the camera lens, right? Like the old days.
Correct. If you place the light source directly in front of the subject, you flatten their face and blast the background. But by moving a large, soft light source to a 45-degree or even 90-degree angle, you create a gradient.
So it wraps around them.
Yeah, the light sweeps across the face, illuminating one side and gradually falling off into shadow on the other. This carves out the cheekbones and jawline. And because the light is angled, it doesn't spill directly onto the dark background, which preserves that moody atmosphere.
I imagine natural light works beautifully for this too, right? Because a window is essentially a massive directional light source.
Window light is heavily favored for exactly that reason. A large north-facing window provides a broad, wrapping light.
North-facing specifically because it's indirect.
Exactly. It produces a very natural, organic richness in deep colors. The light gently wraps around the subject and naturally decays as it reaches the textured backdrop deeper in the room.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the source document talks about something called rim lighting.
Oh, rim lighting is crucial here.
Yeah, and to me, when I look at these images, rim lighting acts almost like a magical glowing halo.
Yeah.
If you have someone with dark hair standing against a dark emerald curtain and you only use directional light from the front, their hair just melts right into the background.
They completely disappear.
But rim lighting literally cuts them out of the darkness.
The mechanics of rim lighting are essential for the separation we discussed earlier. The photographer places a strong, focused light behind the subject, aiming it back toward the camera.
Oh, so it's pointing away from the background.
Right. It specifically catches the edge of the subject's shoulders, their hair, or their jawline. And because the background is dark, this creates a razor-thin, brilliant outline of light.
It totally prevents the floating head syndrome.
It defines the physical boundary of the subject. The jewel tones stay deep, the shadows remain heavy, but the person pops right off the screen because of that glowing boundary.
That is so cool.
They also strategically use warm studio lighting. If you have a cool sapphire blue or deep teal background, introducing a warm, slightly golden light onto the subject's skin creates this beautiful color contrast.
Warm versus cool.
Yeah, the warm skin tones advance toward the viewer while the cool background recedes.
Which plays right into the specific color harmonies the source material laid out. I love this part. They highlight these classic pairings, and now the underlying theory makes total sense.
The pairings are so intentional.
They really are. Like, they pair emerald with gold, the deep, absorbing green, against the reflective, warm metallic. And they suggest navy and bronze, which uses that exact cool versus warm contrast you just mentioned to create this incredible cinematic warmth.
Every pairing serves a specific purpose, like burgundy and black. That relies heavily on what they call low-key lighting for dramatic evening portraits.
Low-key lighting, meaning mostly dark.
Yeah, low-key lighting intentionally pushes the histogram to the left. The image is predominantly dark tones and deep shadows, utilizing just a fraction of carefully placed light to reveal the texture of the clothing and maybe a glint in the subject's eye.
So moody. And what about the blues and purples?
Well, sapphire and silver creates a sophisticated, almost icy editorial atmosphere, while deep purple and velvet leans heavily into a fine art, painterly aesthetic.
There's a massive variable we haven't touched on yet, though.
What's that?
Well, you can build this incredible, moody, stone-walled set. You can light it perfectly with directional softboxes and rim lights, and then your client walks in wearing a hot pink polo shirt and khaki shorts.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be a disaster.
Right. That has to completely destroy the physics of the lighting and the atmosphere we just talked about.
It entirely shatters the illusion. The human subject is a physical object interacting with this highly curated light. If the wardrobe contradicts the environment, the eye immediately rejects the image.
The source material emphasizes that the total package must be cohesive.
It has to be. And they issue a very strongly worded warning about bright neon colors, actually.
Yeah, they say to avoid them at all costs. And based on what we just discussed about how pastels bounce light, a neon color must be an absolute nightmare for a photographer trying to control shadows.
It's the worst case scenario. Neon dyes are literally fluorescent. They absorb invisible ultraviolet light and re-emit it as visible light.
So they are actively glowing.
They are actively glowing. In a low-key, moody portrait designed around deep, light-absorbing jewel tones, a neon fabric acts like a rogue light source.
Just blasting the camera.
Exactly. It reflects light in a jarring, artificial way that completely fights the natural absorption of the velvet or the stone.
So what are the actual wardrobe choices that survive in this environment?
You need fabrics that possess their own physical weight and interact beautifully with directional light. The sources specifically list velvet gowns, heavy satin dresses, sharply tailored tuxedos, intricate lace bridal gowns.
Silk scarves, statement jewelry, pearl accessories, and gold details.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the difference between satin and velvet there. Because we established that velvet absorbs light and creates those deep micro shadows. But satin does the exact opposite.
It is a brilliant textural contrast. Satin has a smooth, highly reflective surface.
Right.
When a rim light or soft directional light hits a satin dress in a dark room, the fabric catches the light and shimmers brilliantly. It draws the eye, while the velvet background behind it stays dark and matte.
It's a study in contrast, really. Matte against reflective, dark against light, rough stone